Hello fellow StarCraft 2 players, this is another IMBAbuilds guide. This time it's going to be looking at a TVT Proxy Thor rush all-in. Now, this build is actually hilariously effective. You might think at first Thors are incredibly bad in TVT usually, why would they be so good to rush towards? And the answer is, getting a Thor ridiculously early actually does not die to any units in direct fights. They literally, with their armor, with their health, with SCVs repairing, actually do not die if you're doing things correctly. So rushing for a Thor means that you get this all-in where your opponent just cannot kill your actual army. And so it's hilarious, but it's also surprisingly effective. Now, with this build, you're going to be proxying the factory, and you're going to be proxying the armory, so in case your opponent sees it, if they see anything you're doing, a scan won't reveal actually what you're doing. And also, Thors are really slow, so proxying it means that you can get to your opponent's base much faster. Starting off, you get a 10 depot, and you follow that up with a 12 gas, right there. And then, of course, you're going to build one more SCV and then go for a 13 barracks. Just like all gas first openers, you really can't afford to scout until 16, 17 sort of thing, just because of how much lost mining time, mineral mining time goes into the gas geyser. However, with this build, you actually have to scout earlier, or not really scout earlier, but you have to lose an SCV mining minerals earlier, just in order to get the factory proxied. So, on this map, it's a somewhat small map, so you can actually afford to wait until you've mined around 25 gas or so, then send an SCV, see right here, send an SCV out in order to try to build a factory over here. But in general, bigger maps, make sure you send it earlier. Smaller maps, make sure you send it later. Just try to time it out so that you have exactly 100 gas by the time this worker gets to his location. That aside, you're just building SCVs, and as soon as this barracks finishes, you're going to start a Marine. And so far, this looks like a pretty standard Marine Hellion. There we go. Where's the Marine? Oh, that Marine's actually late. Well, that's too bad. Gotta start this... Oh, no, I see. Yeah, okay. Yes, definitely favor starting the factory over it first, because the factory is the most important thing with a Proxy Thor rush, so delaying that Marine a little bit is okay. And because, like I said, you can't actually afford this guy, cutting that Marine just for a little bit is actually acceptable. So is cutting an SCV for a second. Because you're doing an all-in, these things really don't matter that much. As soon as you start the reactor, which is as soon as you finished one Marine, you instantly throw down the second refinery, and that's because Thors cost a lot of gas, especially Thors this early. And then what you're going to do is make a bunch of Marines, make sure that they all work together with your Thors, and if you notice right here, as soon as this factory finishes, you should have close to 100 gas to start that armory down right now. And you're going to get all of your Marines together. You're going to get your 2 Thors together, and then you're going to pull 8 or so SCVs, and I'll explain why in a little bit, in order to just crush the front of your opponent. If they've 1-rack Cephid, it's surprisingly effective. If they've gone for Banshees, you're going to have to deal with Banshees in your base while you're crushing their front, because they won't have anything defending their front. So it's going to be kind of iffy at the start. But in an actual fight, Thors are significantly stronger than Banshees, so you'll have a very good time versus Banshees if they happen to do that. Just try to get this tech lab started after this armory is, sometime into production. It doesn't exactly matter, just make sure it's done by the time this armory finishes so you can instantly start your Thors. And then make sure you're just making Marines, make sure that you're safe versus early all-ins. Interestingly enough, this build actually does lose to other all-ins, because other all-ins, such as the 3 racks all-in, where you just pull all of your SCVs and then go with some 3 barracks, you just won't have enough Marines to deal with that. So you're going to lose versus some things like that. It's kind of a gimmicky build, both the 3 racks all-in and this build, but you're making Thors, so come on, it's worth it. As soon as that armory finishes, make sure to start vehicle plating level 1. As I said before, your Thors do not die, and adding an extra armor to your Thors means that they do not die even more so. So definitely the purpose of this build is to get Thors and then have them not, you can't lose these builds, have them not die. So getting this vehicle plating definitely goes to that same goal. As I said before, don't get supply blocked, keep making Marines, keep making SCVs. You want to build SCVs up until around 28 or so. because, or sorry, not that, 8 more than fully saturated, which is going to be 30 or so, because you're going to be pulling 8 with this actual fight. You're going to make sure that you have a fully saturated mining base, and then not build any more workers than that after you've pulled the workers. Another thing to note, Thors actually cost a lot of supply. So be sure you're on top of your depots and making them extra, because Thors are just surprisingly supply intensive, that building an extra depot or two will not hurt this build whatsoever. Alright, when this Thor is about halfway done, you see I'm a little bit late. You want to go as soon as this Thor pops, but when this Thor is halfway done, you'll get all of your Marines. You'll get 8 or so SCVs. If you notice right here, I happen to get 9, but 8 or so SCVs, 2 Thors, plus 1 vehicle plating, which you'll see is about to finish with the second Thor being done, and then all of your Marines. Now, when you fight, be sure to build a third Thor, and be sure to rally this third Thor into the fight. It should get there by the time the fight's halfway over, and then you'll have 3 Thors. And as I said before, you will not lose these Thors. The strength of it is not losing these Thors. So try your best to make sure that the Marines tank damage, the SCVs tank damage, and also SCVs are really effective at actually repairing. So not only are they meat shields, but they can also repair Thors so that, again, your Thors do not die. The strength of this build is Thors not dying. So, the computer actually instantly GG's upon seeing Thors. That's quality. So when you get up, be sure to surround your Thor with these SCVs if you notice they're all surrounding the Thor. And you can use auto repair, just make sure that they're repairing the Thor as opposed to SCVs. And then, again, make sure your Thors do not die. Against Banshee openers, right about now, a Banshee would, or before this, a Banshee would have gotten to your base, so you're going to have to rally Marines and hope it's enough into your mineral line. You might have to base trade. As I said before, this build is in fact gimmicky, so there's not exactly a normal way to play this build out, except for hope this all-in works. But against Banshees, you're going to make sure that these Marines are no longer rallied towards the fight, these in particular, and they're actually rallied into your mineral line. You want to make sure you're not losing SCVs, and you also want to make sure, again, you're not losing these Thors to Cloak or something. Besides that, though, almost all all-ins straight up die to this. Reapers are incredibly awful against these Thors. A 1-Rax FE, assuming he doesn't have 3 bunkers at the front right here and mass repairing them, your Thors will just crush right through that. Same thing with normal Marine Hellion medevac drop. Your Thors will just walk through Hellions like they're butter. But again, versus all these things, keep your Thors alive. The strength is keeping these Thors alive. So always favor that over anything else. If you are facing a 1-Rax FE and the guy somehow scouts it and has, let's say, a Marauder or 2 and then 5 bunkers, keep the Thors alive. Do not commit to the actual attack. Pull back, expo, play from behind, try to play normal. But don't lose the Thors. Losing the Thors is a big impossibility of coming back from because of the huge investment you've put into it. And that, folks, is the Proxy Thor Rush build. I'll go recap it really quickly. 10 Depot, 12 Gas Geyser, 13 Barracks. As soon as the Barracks finishes, hopefully your SCV is already over here to start the factory. Make sure you're building a Marine and an Orbital as well. As soon as that Marine pops, start the Reactor and second Gas Geyser. And then make sure you're mining all of these Gas Geysers the entire time. Start the Armory at the next 100 gas before the tech lab, and when this armory is finished, hopefully you've done the tech lab by then, start +1 vehicle plating and Thor production, and then move out with 2 Thors, a bunch of Marines, and 8 SCVs. And that, folks, is the build. Thanks for watching.